What's up, guys? My name is Justin. Welcome back to the channel today. I am here with Alex McCann. Alex had the brilliant idea after seeing my Stories of JKR video a couple days ago, actually. He decided that a cool idea would be to get some of the more notable and prominent members from the history of JKR over its time period to kind of come in and talk a little bit about their side of the story, what they've done in JKR, and kind of what they've done either since they've left JKR and gone to different things or what they do now. So, Alex, I'll turn it over to you, introduce yourself, and talk a little bit about your career in iRacing and how it ties into me.
Sure. Yeah. I have been interested in racing, since I was very young. Um, on the NASCAR side of things, I was introduced to being a Jeff Gordon fan probably before I even really understood, what racing was because his car was really cool colors. So that's really, how I decided my favorite driver, and from there I watched the sport. A lot on and off. There was times where we didn't watch as much. It really kind of depended on what my parents were doing because they were the ones that really introduced me to it in the first place. So there were times where I didn't watch as much, especially when I was younger. But I always pulled for Jeff Gordon. And once I got to junior senior year of high school is when I really started to dive back into it. So maybe a longer gap than some people even realize between when I was initially an NASCAR fan and when I kind of dove in like fully committed to watching it all the time and just being always in the know. Um, and around that time is when I had been doing a lot of online gaming. I'm a big gamer outside of sim racing as well. And it kind of just struck me the one day I was like, there's got to be a way that I can race other people online. I've never been a fan of facing like AI in any kind of game, whether it's Call of Duty or any shooter or racing. I'm not a person that enjoys racing AI. It's just my personal preference. So um, I kind of it just popped in my head. I was like, why have I never checked for this? Like, there's got to be somewhere I can race online. So um, that brought along at the time, I believe it was NASCAR. The Game Inside Line was the one I started with, and I just did some research and found out I could race online there. So I bought the game and just dove right in racing on a PS4 controller. Um, it wasn't the most competitive thing, and there was plenty of issues with it, and a lot of times you find yourself in 2 3 person races. But it was enough for me because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to race other people online. I had no real options to race in real life, or at least raced anything that I was interested in racing in real life. um, it was good, and it fulfilled what I wanted to get out of it. And then basically what happened, just in an online race on there one time. It was one of the more crowded lobbies, and the one guy got to talking about how he had just started iRacing and how he wasn't going to be on the game much longer, and he was just talking about everything that was great about it. And I asked him some questions because it sounded really good to me too, and I was like, if I can get more than this, than what I'm getting out of this PlayStation game right now, then by all means, like, I want to do it. So he told me some more info, some more details about iRacing, and that was all it really needed for me to go to the old Google machine and just say, is this really possible? Um, One of my biggest concerns right off the bat was my internet. I know you made reference to that in your video. So when I live with my parents, we live out in the middle of nowhere. There's basically the only neighbors out there are Amish communities. So I mean, that if that gives you an idea, there's not much high speed internet access out that way. Um, and it's funny because we have a camp up, in the mountains about an hour and a half from where my parents live, and even up there has better service and internet accessibility than they still do to this day.
Wow.
That was a concern, and on top of that, I wasn't working at the time. I was still in high school, and I was very involved with sports, so I needed the money to buy like a wheel and pedals as well. So that was a bit of an uphill battle, like basically convincing my mom, because she supported me really really well with like actual sports, but she could never get behind any sort of gaming or online interaction stuff like that. So that was an uphill battle. Eventually, I convinced her to let me get a wheel and pedals, and from there, I got a subscription, um, and the rest was pretty much history. I mean, I can go into some details of when I initially started, but maybe we save that for when we talk about a little bit more of our history, I guess. Because it was basically that was the start of my iRacing career, and ever since that, I never went back to PlayStation racing. I mean, I don't know who would. It's iRacing was even at that time. I mean, this was 2014, so it was even at that time, and its earlier stages, it was much better than anything else you could race. So
Yeah, I mentioned that briefly in my video about my days on Forza and how, after joining iRacing, like you said, it's a different iRacing than it was 10 years ago or whatever, but it's still, I can never go back and play pretty much any console-based game and ever have the same kind of feeling of competition and realism that iRacing has given me now. So it's ruined all console racing for me forever. But
yeah,
uh,
100%.
the thing I did want to touch on, though, and I'll let you kind of expand on this, obviously. First of all, like you said, a little bit about how we kind of met. It was several years ago. We met well before we did the late model stuff, which we'll get into in a little bit. But kind of how we met through iRacing, and then also kind of how you became, honestly, one of the more notable time trial racers on iRacing, which I mentioned briefly. But I mentioned not in any kind of detail that you were the kind of the king time trialer, but I don't think people really get the scope of what that means or why you became so good at that.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Well, I'll talk a little bit about the time trials first, and then I'll dive into our initial uh, our initial meeting. So basically, to piggyback off of what we've already said about my horrible internet, that left me struggling at times, specific times of day usually, and if the weather was very bad or like had a bad snowstorm or something, it was pretty much a no go, no option to race other people online. My car would either just be blinking and people would constantly be yelling at me, or it was decent, and nobody was really saying anything, but I'd end up getting booted because of the famous what's it called, the throughput or
Yeah.
whatever
Yep.
fell below an acceptable level. Um, so that would happen a lot, and it frustrated me because I speed wise I was competitive even after maybe a week of being on the sim, and I wanted to kind of grind a little bit and get some iRating. And not that, I mean, I completely realize it's iRacing, it's a sim world, but I think everybody that does iRacing should treat it as their own virtual racing career. It makes it more fun, it makes it more enjoyable than just going out there with no purpose. So I really wanted to keep grinding, but taking, 3, 4, 500 iRating point hits every time I'd throughput was not fun. It frustrated me. It hurt my stats. Additionally, I'm a big stat guy, so not even just iRating, but like if I was winning the race or if I was in the top 5 and it ended up being a last place, like that just drove me nuts. Um, and there was even a point where there was a 2-year stretch that I didn't even race anymore. I basically temporarily retired from iRacing, saying I'm not getting back on here until I move out and get better internet. Um, but basically, what that drove me to do was find other ways to compete. And iRacing offers time trial championships that run week by week alongside with the racing championships. And basically, that just consists of running, 10 laps as hard as you can. You can't get an incident point, so you can't scrape the wall, you can't go off track or anything. 10 laps as hard as you can, and it takes your average lap time over the 10 laps. And this was way, way, way better for me in my situation at the time because I could run by myself without really any issues. I can't remember ever having an internet problem running laps by myself. So it just kind of lended itself to what I was trying to do because I still wanted to compete, and I really loved iRacing, so I didn't want to go back to the PlayStation. I said, okay, well, I'll race when I can, but I pretty much gave up racing for the actual points championships, like the racing side of things. I said I'll race when I can to get wins, and then I'll just do time trials and actually compete for points there. Little bit frustrating because anybody that's been on iRacing knows that there's not nearly as many people that compete for time trial championships. So a lot of it's kind of a little bit of a running joke to some people, especially for some of the lower participated series, that it's a time trial championship doesn't mean anything. And in some cases that's true. I mean, if you run the full season and there's only 4 to 5 people that complete 8 weeks, which is the minimum to score your max points, then yeah, you beat 4 or 5 people, which is it's fine. It's a win. I always say celebrate all your wins, just celebrate the bigger ones that much more. But I get it. I get why people would bash the some time trial championships, but It got to the point where I was competing for 4 to 5 a season. So that's basically 8 weeks of time trials, or 4 to 5 series over the course of a season. And I started to move into ones that were more competitive because myself, I wanted to challenge myself more. So I started doing C fixed, B fixed stuff that I would never even really choose to race on iRacing because I've another thing about me, I've never been a fan of iPacing, and unfortunately, too many people just don't understand that they don't have to win in turn one or in 5 laps. And I mean, everybody that's been on there knows the deal. And I just don't like it. I don't like the caution coming out and then everybody going down pit road after 5 laps and then caution coming out. I like to run green flag laps. That's why I always stay to the late model series, stuff like that. But that's why I've never raced B fixed, A fixed a whole lot. Like my total career starts still to this day is on those series. Like the NASCAR fixed series is probably under 50. So not a lot of activity there, but I still enjoy driving the cars, and I saw that as a way to compete with more people because in the time trial championships, a lot more people complete the full season for that. So started winning those, kept winning the smaller ones as well. Um, and it just got to the point where, okay, how many championships can I get this season? And I try to outdo myself from the last season. Um, I took a little bit of a break from it for a while once I got good internet. I don't want to get too far ahead, but once I got good internet, I did take a break, and then there was a couple seasons where I got back into it again. And before I really stopped iRacing, which was almost 2 years ago now, Justin pointed out to me. Um, I did do the research. I went the whole way back, and there's nobody even close in overall time trial championships than I am for iRacing history. So, not that, again, not bragging to my own horn. It's just a stat that I looked up and I was curious about. Not too many people have 40 of those, and that's how many I have right now of overall time trial championships. But what I'm more proud of with the time trials than like just the championships, because again they're not quite as competitive, is just the random weeks where I would be competing for a time trial, and then for whatever reason, some really well known iRacer would come in and do a time trial. They're not running for points. They didn't do any other weeks, but they just ran that one week for whatever reason, and I would beat them. And that was my most probably time trial moments when I was beating either pro drivers or people in the late model community that are really good. I've had some really fun time trial battles in the late model and super late model where I'd run my first one of the week, and then this person that hadn't ran all year comes in and ran, and I'd be like, okay, here's a new benchmark, and then I'd go beat them, and then you could tell that they were checking just as often because then they'd go run another one, and we just go back and forth. But yeah, after doing it enough, I got pretty good at running 10 laps really hard. It just was something that I was good at. So um, I don't know. You think that's a good enough summary on that, Justin?
Yeah, yeah, I think that we can kind of tie that into what's next. But again, I'd just like you to kind of talk about the start of us, and then I'll kind of get
Sure.
into what we ended up with a couple of years ago.
Sure. Yep. So I jotted a couple things down when I was thinking about this the other day. And you might disagree, so feel free to jump in. But
Okay.
my my earliest memory of encountering you on the service was in an IRA league race at Martinsville. We were running the Xfinity cars, and this was only maybe my third race in that league. I had just joined it. I hadn't even messed with league racing. Somebody had reached out to me. I think it was William Kruska, and he said, "Do you want to be in my league?" And this was before I was even on iRacing. I said, "Well, I'm not even on there yet, but maybe one day I'll reach back out to you if I get on there." So sure enough, I did. And um, I joined like mid-season, and Martinsville was either, like I said, my second or third race, and I was struggling. I mean, really struggling, and I couldn't really figure it out. One of my biggest weaknesses in all of sim racing is braking, especially with heavier cars. So like road courses and NASCAR equipment and Martinsville and NASCAR cars, not my strong suit. I'm much better in the late models and stuff like that. So I thought maybe that was part of the issue, and I'm sure it was to a degree. But it wasn't until I think we were maybe halfway into the race that I was just following in line with a couple of the other people that were running ninth or 10th. And I just realized, like, I heard them and I heard them downshifting. And it just occurred to me that, oh my gosh, like maybe they're actually shifting. I think it was just the way the set was at the time. But it turned out like every corner they were literally shifting down to third and going back up to fourth. And I was just running the whole thing in fourth gear. And sometimes shifting makes a big difference. Other times it's like, maybe it's personal preference. But the moment I started shifting, I mean, I just came to life. It was insane how much faster I was. And I think I was maybe ninth or 10th. Those weren't huge fields. There was maybe 12 cars. So I think I was ninth or 10th, and I worked my way up to the top five pretty easily once I figured that out. And I think I was maybe up to third when we got a late yellow. And I think Justin had been, I think you had been battling for the lead or up there. I don't remember who the other people were, but you had decided to stay out under yellow on fairly old tires. So that was a pretty ballsy call, even to this day. Um, and I took tires, and I forget who the other person was, but I ended up restarting third, I believe. And there wasn't many laps left, maybe 20, 25, something like that. And I was like, man, this guy's on old tires. Had no clue who you were. I just saw this name, Elaine Krasneski. I was like, okay.
Let's turn
I
it way
think maybe.
back.
I, I'm like, I think I have the best tires of anybody, except maybe this other guy to my outside, and I definitely have way more speed. Maybe I'm gonna end up winning this race. So they threw the green, and I started. I think I started off really well. So I think I got to second, like right behind you, right off the bat. I was like, okay, this is gonna be easy, because now I'm just behind this guy on old tires, and it really wasn't. So that was kind of the first moment where I was like, oh man, this guy's solid. He's legit. Um, and you were holding me off, and it got to the point where I think maybe we had 10 to go, and I was starting to question, okay, maybe I'm not gonna get this guy, and then it starts to go through. The thoughts start to go through your head, contemplating like, am I gonna try to move him? Am I gonna try to bump him? I don't even know anybody in this league yet. Like, I don't want to make a bad reputation. But we were pretty much running nose to tail for the most part. We'd have one guy would have a good lap, another guy would have a good lap. But then we got down to like two to go, and I was really still not sure what I was gonna do, and your car vanished. And I guess you throughput it. I don't know if it was an internet thing, or what happened, but we were all robbed of a very good finish. Like, even the people that were out of the race that were watching, them were all like, "Where'd he go?" Like, I was so into that finish, and I ended up winning the race because obviously you got booted for one reason or another. And then I remember afterwards, I mean, you were very frustrated that you didn't get credited with the win because you most likely were going to still win. And I didn't really feel like I had earned the win, but at the same time, it was my first win in a league. And I was like, I want to celebrate this because I'm so used to having internet issues on, going negatively for me. I'm like, I kind of want to celebrate this win, but I also feel horrible because it was like two to go. Like, that's not even an exaggeration. You got booted with two to go. It was crazy. So then I think we ended up messaging each other on Twitter afterwards, and after we talked a bit, and I kind of explained like how bad my luck had been up until that point with internet problems. You kind of calmed down and understood, and really ever since that point, I think we had a pretty strong bond, or maybe a appreciation for each other when we saw each other on the track. Um, so that's what I remember from the first time seeing you. Maybe
Yeah.
if something happened before that, let me know.
Well, I was just gonna say, I remember that race, but I didn't remember the details of how we got to where you won, and I was upset. I remember the not being able to win and that you'd won that race, but I didn't remember the details of it. And I remember because when I joined Kruska's league, I had just gotten done with Upper Edge, or was in the process of being booted out of Upper Edge, and was just kind of at a crossroads of what I wanted to do with iRacing. Did I want to start taking it seriously or whatnot? And I remember that, like you said, the IRA leagues were kind of spotty as far as competition sometimes. Um,
Yes.
but I remember the first race, I was running so well in that league for the most part against a lot of the guys. But I remember the first race ever where I got my ass kicked was you at Phoenix in the Truck Series in your 24 Tundra, and you went in there and just smoked all of us at the end of that year, whatever the season was. And I was just
Yep.
like, man, what the hell? Everything was going good until this guy showed up and started running. And then, like you said, we talked, and I learned more about the TT prowess that you had and everything. And I really credit you, honestly, as one of the first people that pushed me to continue to get better, because there were times, and I'm sure you can relate to this, when you join iRacing, right, you end up in splits that are kind of hectic if you race officials or whatnot.
Mhm.
And so sometimes you
Yeah.
run really well and you think you're incredible, and then you get in a really good split with good drivers and you get your ass kicked and you're like, oh my goodness, I should quit, like
Yeah.
unbearable. And you were the first person I got to race really weekly or bi-weekly or whatever that made me get better all around, honestly. I'd raced, I'll talk to Alex Bell and Adam Meyer later, who have been friends with me longer than you have, but we all kind of came up together, whereas when I met you, you were already probably better than I was, at least from a speed standpoint. It really made me adapt myself to improve as a driver, but that kind of we kind of went our separate ways after that, honestly. You kind of went, like you talked about, down the late mile, super late mile, ARCA route, both time trials and occasional races and whatnot. But about 2 years ago, then, with COVID and everything, we kind of reconvened running late models week to week together with a bunch of other people. And that was kind of our thing for a while, in addition to you chasing a dirt street stock championship. So talk a little bit about how we got into that and then how we ended up being the Smurfs at dirt street stocks, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, we like you said, we kind of did move different directions after we kind of left the IRA league. Well, we didn't really leave it; it kind of just
Ceased
fizzled
to
out.
exist overnight.
Ceased to exist. Yeah. Yeah, which sucked because William, I like William, and I like racing with him. I see he's still on. He's
Yeah,
actually does well sometimes,
yeah, he's
so
a good dude.
it's great. Um, but yeah, we went kind of different ways, and a lot of the reasons behind that I've already kind of went over. I enjoyed the no caution format of short tracks, and additionally, I struggle anywhere I have to brake with NASCAR cars, like trucks, Xfinity Cup, any of that. I struggle. Um, So I stayed in the short tracks. That's what I liked, and I knew there was a strong community there. Even back in back then, it was still the posse and Ty
Yes, yes.
and Kevin and
Yep.
Riley. At the time, Riley was a little. I wanted to bring this up. I'll bring this up now. Riley and Parker, Retzloff, however I don't know how you pronounce it, but you remember when we started and they were literally like too young to even have an account. Like you could
Yes.
just hear it in their voice. They were just squeakers.
Yes, I do.
And I'd win races all the time with them in there, and they'd congratulate me, and they'd say like good job like every single time. Like you could tell like they kind of in a way almost looked up to me. It's just crazy to look at things now, and it's like Riley's super successful, both on the sim, and I think he won a track championship last year somewhere. Um, and then Parker, obviously, he's making starts in the Xfinity car. So, just crazy. But just I didn't know if you had any similar experiences with like people that were really young when you started, and now they're on and doing things in real life.
Well, I like to think about it actually almost in the other way as a whole, right? I remember getting into late mile races with Majeski when I
Hmm.
had just bought the late mile, right? And he would put me 2 laps down in a 50-lap
Oh
race,
yeah,
which is ridiculous. And now I think about, now the level that I reached in iRacing and obviously what he's gone to do in NASCAR. It's kind of cool, even though he'd still kick my ass, obviously, to say you raced with him back when, before he was a household name. I kind of think that that's almost cooler
pretty cool.
than the
Pretty
guys you
cool. Yeah.
mentored. If you think about all, like you're talking about Retzloff, I have so much more respect for him now. When he was an iRacer like full time, like years ago, I thought he was the biggest punk, was in over his head, drove like a dick. He was an asshole, junk him every chance I get type of thing. And I still don't really like him, but at least now I recognize that obviously he's a tremendous driver, and it's really cool to see someone that you kind of raced with semi regularly make
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It's very cool. I mean, there's so many times where I'll just be sitting there watching a race or something at my parents, and I'll say to my dad like, "Oh, you see that guy? Like I've raced with him on iRacing forever." And dad, I mean, he really doesn't understand iRacing,
Yeah.
even no matter how many times I've explained it to him. But he still thinks it's cool. He likes to hear stuff like that. So um, very cool. And I guess that my Ty Majeski story, the first time I ever encountered that name, I think it was a Legends race at South Boston, and I thought I was pretty fast. Like I thought I would compete for the win and for sure be top three, and I was. I think I was second or third. This time Majeski guy lapped us twice, and I got done with the race, and I was just like, "Who the heck is this guy?" Literally the first time I'd heard his name. I think at the time he already had maybe close to a 9 KI rating or something. I don't know. So he was already really well known, but to me he wasn't, and that was my first experience. And I can't remember who it was that pointed out to me like he's just go look at his profile. I was like, why didn't I think of that? So um I looked at his profile and I was like, okay, now that makes a little more sense. But yeah, it was kind of crazy if you just started on iRacing getting beat by Ty Majeski. It made you kind of just question, if you knew your right from your left.
Yeah. Do I
Um,
suck? Yeah.
I mean, it was wild. But yeah, so I stuck to the short track stuff for the most part. Every once in a while, I'd run an occasional NIS race if it was at a track that I really liked. Um, and then not long after that, I think I really started to get into only time trials, like I'd mentioned, and I think maybe tried racing for another couple seasons. And it wasn't long after that that I decided to hang it up. I think at the time I was maybe at like a 4K OVI rating. I had just got up to like 5K, and then the very next race I had internet issues. Um, Brought me back down to like 4,600 or something crazy. And I said, that's enough. I'm done. I'm out. So um, fast forward like 2 years almost, like almost a full 2 years, and got a house, have made sure I had the best internet possible, got a new gaming PC. Like I was ready to just hit the ground running. So I got back in. They had added iRacing had added dirt since I'd left. I did actually get back on like right when they added dirt. Back at mom and dad's just to run laps on my own, and I competed in the inaugural dirt street stock time trial championship. Finished second. Um, can't remember the name of who beat me, but I wish I did because he deserves credit. We grinded really hard. But other than that, that was my only involvement in dirt. And then I didn't touch it again until I was at my new house and had the internet. So I came back and I knew I wanted to race some dirt because I had a computer that could handle it. I had good internet. And I said, I'm going to definitely run dirt. I don't know how much, but I'm going to do that. Was going to do some short track, and I really did not have any plans to do NASCAR. I was going to do the same thing from an asphalt side of life, and do the same thing I did before. Late models, ARCA, um, modifieds every once in a while. Although modifieds are probably my least favorite of all those. And I started racing some. Did pretty good the most part. I mean, I was winning a little bit, and then it wasn't long after that. I think Justin, probably through Twitter or something, just noticed that I was back on iRacing and kind of reached out to me because he had his own little late model thing going on. I don't know how long that had been going on for before I got back on the sim, but I know you were now building late model sets, which was like, oh my gosh, this is really, he's changed his tune because I don't think you were building sets at all back then.
Yeah, not at all.
So I was like, well, that's pretty cool. And he was like, well, yeah, you can. I think you might have gave me your one set to try, and I said, man, that was a good set because I went out and won maybe my first race with it or something like that. And I think at that point he was like, well, I plan on building for the entire next season because we were almost at the end of a season, and he's like, why don't you make a run at the points? And I was like, oh, I don't know, I haven't done that in a long time. Like I was kind of trying to ease back into things. Um, but and then I kind of thought about it some more. I think you probably did a little convincing as well. But I thought about it. I was like, man, the whole reason I didn't points race before was because of internet. I have no excuses now. It was almost like I was too accustomed to running time trials that I was almost scared to jump back into racing like for points. Um, but I think I like Justin's sets enough that I said, all right, well, let's do it. So we dove in and basically planned to run for points. And I think I don't know if it was at the same time or if it was already planned, but that's about when I got introduced to River. And he was apparently winning everything he sat in at the time because everybody was like, "Wow!" Like just I could tell from the Discord chat, like, "Okay, River must be the real deal." Just the way people were talking to him and stuff. So I was like, "Okay, so he must be part of our team then," because it all happened very fast. But then we ran, I think, the first week at South Boston, and I was on Justin's set. And oh, I forget there was a couple other big names in there. It wasn't a bad strength of field at all for the first week back. and I think I qualified a little worse than I wanted to, but ended up racing well, and I think I got up to third before the checkers flew. River ended up winning that race, so he won. He won. I think it ended up being the biggest race of the week. Um, and then whoever got second, maybe it might have been Wisniewski.
Ah,
Um,
yeah, Aaron.
yep. And I was like, okay, that I did it. I had finished ahead of some names that I was not sure if I would or not. Just seeing them when I first lined up, the set performed well, just like I expected it to. And River had won the race, and I was like, okay, so we're looking good here. So I think some other big races did happen throughout the week. I don't know if any of them beat that strength of field, but the usual guys ended up getting up in there, and I think maybe I was sitting like seventh or eighth after the week was all said and done. And the ultimate goal was really to finish top five because that gets you a certificate. Um, I like late models, and I think I'm pretty good at it. But I wasn't stupid enough to ever think I had a chance at the championship with some of the people that compete for points in the late models. So really, that was the goal from the start of the season was top five, and that first week basically convinced me that okay, this is possible. From there, I would say the season was a heck of a roller coaster ride because there were weeks where we just weren't as fast. Um, and there were weeks where what was working for River was not working for me. I mean, he's a crazy man. He drives. I think he's insanely talented.
Yeah,
Um, Probably better than we are. I would say easily.
yeah, he
At least,
definitely drives almost out of control, which I can do for a little bit, but he does it every single race.
yeah, yeah. So I really enjoy getting to work with him, and at the same time, I think he didn't even like come in like saying he was going to run points, but William Ridgway had came
Yep,
and
yep.
joined the Discord like a couple weeks later, and made really good friends with William. Him and I just got along awesome, and ended up racing together even after JKR, like after the fact. Just really good dude, and I enjoyed every moment I spent racing with William. But he ended up basically deciding, I think, after week one to run for points as well, and he ended up doing great, pretty much the whole season, as did River, and my season ended up, being exactly what I wanted it to be. I ended up in the top five after quite a grind. There was actually a week towards the end of the season where I didn't think it was going to happen, but we came back strong in the final couple weeks to really seal it off and secure fifth place. I think William ended up either seventh or eighth. So we put three JKR cars in the top 10 up against some powerhouse teams. So it felt like I don't know what a good modern day analogy would be. Maybe like a track house going up against Hendrick type thing. Um, it was really fulfilling at the end of the season to look back and see that all three of us were there. River ended up, I think, third, or maybe second. If you're listening to this, River, don't get mad at me. Second,
Yeah.
I can't remember. Um, but yeah, really good seasons. And then that was just the top three people in the points. We had a couple division winners. I don't remember who won what at the top off the top of my head, but a couple people that won their division running those sets. We had um, an insane number of wins. I calculated all this back when the season was over, and it was just looking at all the numbers at the end of the season. It was I think everybody in the Discord was really proud. We did a lot of practices. We usually have one each week minimum, basically a couple days before the race, just testing things and really just helping each other out. Some people that were newer, because all people were always joining. It was a very open group to helping people. So people were always joining, and they'd lean on the people that have been doing it for a while or the people that were having success at the time. And it was good. It was probably the most enjoyable season of my iRacing career. Um, had some really good moments before JKR, and I had some really great ones after too. But that season there was probably the most memorable of my entire sim racing career, just because I felt like I was able to help a bunch of people, and I felt like um, everybody just meshed really well together. And to put three people in the top 10 like that was a cool accomplishment.
I
So
think it
I
was.
think
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I think you would have been top 10 as well, but I don't think you ended up running the full um, schedule. I
Yeah,
think.
that was the time. Well, I was just gonna say I'd reached 5K running Legends at USA in 2019, and I started
Hmm.
building setups more regularly, like when COVID started. Like that was when I was building, 10, 12 sets of weeks for various things. And it's crazy, like you were talking about the success we had. I think everybody that ran a race won a race that season
Oh
in
yeah.
what was probably outside of a pro series at the time, like the most competitive series on iRacing was late models because everybody and their mother was getting into it, as far as getting a team together, and that's when setup shops are coming up. And
Oh
like you're
yeah.
saying, it really was kind of came out of nowhere, and we ran so well. I was so proud of that. Not even because I was doing anything particular, because I was really just chasing ironing at that point, because I knew I wasn't good enough at all the tracks to have a shot at a.
Yep.
I mean, I could probably run top 25 in points, but I'd rather help you guys chase that overall. Um, but like you said, it came out of nowhere. I built sets for maybe like 6 months or a year because I liked B and C open, running longer races, less cautions, more field spread, pit stops, that type of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and then when we met people like River, it like we were talking about earlier, it kind of twisted what we were on iRacing. We were kind of the mentors then, as far as questions were asked. People would rely on us for knowledge, that type of stuff, and that was probably the coolest part of it. It wasn't just that we were building good sets and running so well as a group, but answering questions, helping to test stuff out, sharing
Yeah.
knowledge about tracks and all that type of stuff. I think that was my favorite part of all that, was how we kind of turned into that elder statesman in a way.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, it was very rewarding. Um, yeah, I mean, the powerhouse teams were all popping up that season. I mean, Rocket Racing, Ico. I mean, Pearl and DW's team. I don't know if that was really a setup shop at the time, but still, that was a powerhouse team. And then the Posse, whenever they dropped in, and here we are, just JKR, like just we're over here too, guys.
Yeah,
And I think a lot of times they just overlooked us. But some weeks we were stout, and I'm guessing Rivers' highlight. He could correct me if I'm wrong, but his highlight of that season was probably the race at Concord where he just straight out outran DW. I remember we tried really hard every week to have the same pace as them, and for whatever reason, we just had it like that race, and he drove the wheels off it because I mean we didn't have him by much, and I know I was in third, I think, in the closing laps watching it unfold, and I was happy for River.
yeah.
But kind of at the same time, I'm sure you probably feel the same way. A little sad to even say W's name at this point.
Yeah, I really
Um,
miss DW, not just because he was a great competitor, but because he was always helpful. I mean, so many of those people from the setup shops, they would turn you away because they're protecting their secrets or whatever, and I'm like, that's kind of weird, but whatever. But DW, he would never, help you too much, but he was always there to answer questions, give tips, compare
yeah,
notes, just all around great dude, and I really miss him. Such a sad loss for the racing community as a person as well. Um, it's wild how all that played out, because like you mentioned Concord, the other one that came to mind was Lanier, where River was able to
yep,
beat DW. And I remember at Lanier, same thing. I was running in third. DW got impatient and moved me out of the way and didn't quite have
yep,
time to try to catch River. But I
yeah,
just remember thinking, this is crazy. Like that we're at this level right now where I'm getting moved by a 8,000 ironing driver to go catch
yes,
one of my sets trying to win this top split of the week race. That bonkers. That it blows my mind even now to think back on. Like you said, it wasn't every week, but the success we found as a group was something really, really special, and that's something I'm going to cherish for a long time.
yeah, yeah. And I think the other cool thing was all the people that really completed the whole season, each of them had at least one moment over the season where they really triumphed or did something like that everybody could just really give them a pat on the back or a congratulations. That just felt good, honestly, seeing people have success. River, I was always happy for him, but like we knew that he was gonna be successful because he's nuts.
Yeah,
But people like Coy, William, oh, who else? We got
there are a lot of
Steven,
people in there. Gibson was, yeah, Carl Felver ran well a couple times in there.
Carl, David.
Yeah, that was
Um,
like the first time I was really proud that JKR was around to help those people and to get everybody together and chase a common goal.
yeah, yeah, it was a very fun time. For me, it was my favorite week was New Smyrna. That was
Yeah,
the race I had circled, and sure enough, I won it. So that was all I could ask from that season.
yeah,
Honestly, that I was
we
so happy.
we did not see that gray and blue car very long that week. Just
Yeah,
quickly,
shout out to Kimry
Kimry,
for
he
that
still
car.
does all my half of my paints. He's a great dude. I love Kimry. Just real
Mm,
quick, Alex. I know we've gone off on a couple of different tangents. I want you to talk a little bit about when we were dirt street stock Smurfs because that was kind of
yes.
how we met Carter and kind of the last time we ever raced together regularly. And then kind of what you up to now as far as racing and what your plans are for the future.
Yeah, okay. So dirt street stocks happened, I believe, actually alongside the late model or the season right after. Um, like I said, I'd done that initial time trial championship when dirt came out, and I finished second. So I felt like I was pretty good in the dirt street stocks. Um, and they have a rookie series, so at least I think it has changed actually since this happened. But at the time, it was ran just like the rookie asphalt street stock series, where there's two tracks and it just alternates for the 12 weeks, 6 weeks one, 6 weeks the other. So if you can get good at those two tracks, you've kind of got a shot, you know. And my motto when I was in the asphalt street stocks when I first started iRacing was, okay, I'm going to try to just run this first season, win as many times as I can, and then most people just move up right away because that's they get on iRacing. Oh, I want to race NASCAR. Well, for me, I wanted to make sure I was ready to race NASCAR, so I ran that first season, won as many times as I could, and then the second season, I said I have to win the championship or I'm not moving up and racing anything else. So I raced for points and I won that rookie street stock series in my second season on iRacing. I decided I really liked how that worked. I think it helped me really springboard into the next series and the next level and be a clean racer and things like that. So I said, I'm going to do the same thing with the dirt series. If I can, I'm going to run the first season and try to win as many races as I can and learn. And then the second season, I'm going to run for points. And that's exactly what I did. So the first season, I ran at USA International in Lanier. When the game first came out, I think you could only race USA, so I only had laps at USA heading into this. But Linear turned out to be, it's a pretty straightforward track, so it wasn't too much of a learning curve. But I still prefer USA of those two original dirt tracks. Um, and I won quite a few races that first season. I think I finished fifth, maybe in the points, something like that. And geared up for the next season to try and do the same thing I'd done on the asphalt side, try to win a championship in the rookie dirt street stock series before doing anything else. And I think when I was getting ready for that season is when I had talked with you a little bit, probably just through the Discord because we were still racing late models and stuff. And I think you had already ran some dirt street stock races previously, maybe even before I got back on the sim. I can't remember when that was, but you were pretty fast in them as well. So um, I think I kind of kept the whole group up to date in the Discord and maybe on Twitter with like how my season was going. But I think eventually Justin had seen enough of me winning, and he wanted to go. He wanted to race and have some fun racing
that
head to head.
that is definitely not true, but okay.
So yeah, we eventually raced together. I think it was Lanier where we raced the first time. Um, I think I won that time, but looking back on it, I have no clue how because the next couple of times we raced at Lanier, I couldn't even couldn't even come close. I think our queue times were like a tenth and a half off, which is crazy at Lanier. Um, so I would say you're definitely superior, at least at Lanier, in the dirt street stock. But we had a good time doing that, and it made us want to race more. So like you had mentioned earlier, it got to the point where we just jump in and pretty much just go race, nose to tail for the entire race and end up 7, 8 seconds ahead of the field. And maybe that's bad on us because it was the rookie dirt street stock series, but it was fun. They're good races and there's no yellows again, so no yellows are great. I'm all about the racing, not about the pacing. So um, lots of fun, and there's plenty of people on alt accounts that run the rookie series too, just because the feasibility, the accessibility to run a race every what are they every half hour, every hour, something
I
like
think
that.
they were every half hour at the time, but maybe not.
Yeah, so it's just nice. So a lot of people I think have alt accounts. They're like, well, this is just my fun go race account, and then they have their main to maybe grind I rating. I never dabbled in an alt account. Didn't really see the need just because I was just progressing through my licenses and my plan as I at my own pace, I guess. So I never moved up until I was ready to move up.
Yeah,
Um,
don't get alts there. They ruin iRacing for you as a whole, but that's a whole nother story.
yeah,
When I think back about our time in dirt street stocks, though, I would make an argument first off that we kind of were truly rookies because although
yeah,
We were both high-level pavement oval racers, and I ended up becoming a pretty high-level pavement road racers. I had no idea what the hell I was doing on dirt. I mean, like you said, we ran well, but I don't know how much of that was we ended up being pretty good and how much we were racing rookies, like you say.
Yeah.
Um, but I definitely preferred linear much more. I still do, and I think I was better on a fresh racetrack. I think when it was slick, especially at USA, you tended to have my number usually with throttle
Mm,
control. But I remember I would say I was probably like let's say 5% better than you at linear, but you were a solid 10 to 15% better than me at USA. So the three of us, you, me, and Carter, ended up running away pretty early in the season in the points. And when we talked about it and when I had started racing those, I wasn't intending to run for points. I just ended up racing regularly
yeah.
and saw I was running better than I thought I was, and saw that you were also running well, and so we decided to make an effort of it. But it ended up being you, me, and Carter Russo. I think that were the three that were kicking everybody's butt, and he's a great guy as well, great driver. And I don't remember exactly how we got to the point, but you needed to win the last week at Lanier to
Yes.
ensure
Yes.
that you ended up with the championship, and I was going to be third no matter what. I couldn't catch you guys, and nobody behind me could catch me. And I kind of liken it a little bit to when I reached my 6K on road at Watkins. And when I was running, that's the same week that I won the overall championship when we ran that kind of sort of stacked Pontiac split.
Yep.
And I had all the confidence in myself to be able to win, but that insurance never hurts, right? So
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
I'll just quickly, if you tell me about your side of that last race at Lanier, kind of your prep for a moment like that in your time on the sim, and how you were able to beat me that day, and I probably wouldn't have raced you hard, but I don't think I was going to beat you regardless, because when you're on a mission, you're just harder to beat. So tell me kind of
Yeah.
what that means to you, because I think that was like your first racing championship overall, right?
Well, I mean, I did win the rookie oval one, asphalt street stocks in
Oh
2014.
yes,
So
yes, yes.
so I have basically the rookie street stock championship on both oval and dirt. And those are to this day my only two overall racing championships. Yes. So I I was definitely ready for it because I'd ran so many laps in races at Lanier. You get a ton of practice when it's only two tracks on the schedule. I never really understood why they did that, especially if you have other free tracks that you can offer. It never made sense why you didn't put a couple more of the free short tracks on there. Um, but anyway, you get good at it because there's only a couple different things you're seeing over the course of a season. And I did not prefer linear like we've already talked, but I was good enough that I said if I could just nail my Q lap and get on pole, like I would have to mess up quite bad to really blow it. And so then at that point, you're just kind of in the hands of the racing gods or whatever you want to call it. That enough high I rating people join the race. And it really is hit and miss with at least at the time it was with rookie dirt street stocks. And it just so happened that the one race that I was running, and you get 4 starts a week, so I think it was my second try, and it wasn't even the one that I was kind of expecting to be the big split, just based on each night what hour is usually the biggest. But it just luck worked out. We got like two or three people above I want to say above 2200, 2300 I rating, and typically what we were hoping for was about that, but we weren't expecting to see it that early. So apparently people just decided to race a little earlier that night, and I qualified on pole and never really looked back. I mean, I don't know that I was necessarily nervous because I had a ton of wins in the dirt street stocks at that point, but I was just more kind of in the zone moment where I'm like, okay, here's what you've been wanting. Now just go out and execute. Don't do anything stupid. And look out for the wrecks because that's
Yeah.
the one bad thing with no cautions. But I'll take avoiding wrecks any day over having to pace around.
And there's
So
nowhere to hide at Lanier if something happens.
nowhere. Nowhere. Luckily, everybody in there was pretty good. I don't even remember. I don't even think there was really a wreck. Maybe a couple self spins in that specific race. But yeah, that was fun, and I thought it was pretty cool. Plenty other people have plenty more overall racing championships and more competitive series at that. But I don't know if anybody else has won the rookie overall championship on dirt and on asphalt in a street stock. So that's just kind of a cool thing to have. And even though it's a little less competitive in terms of skill level, it's the most participated of anything because there's more people in the rookie series than any other license level. So um, you look at like how many people complete 8 weeks in even the most popular series, maybe a C fixed, and you'll look. I mean, maybe it's changed now, but back in the day, just throw out a number, maybe 200 people, right? Complete 8 weeks. Well, take that and triple it or quadruple it. That's how many people complete 8 weeks in the rookie series. So maybe not as the most competitive, but it's the most participated. So um, definitely a proud accomplishment. I probably even put the dirt one above the oval because the dirt one happened at a time where iRacing had gained so much popularity. The oval one still was I was super proud of it, but iRacing just wasn't what it is today. So
Absolutely. I think that having the versatility that you have to be able to go back and forth, race a lot of different kinds of cars. Because we talked a little bit about you being a little bit more towards your short tracks, the ARCA car, late model, super late model, etc. But I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit. You were pretty damn handy in NASCAR when the time came as well. Maybe not quite to that same level, but it wasn't like you sucked or anything. Don't listen to
it,
him on that regard, people. He was quite the driver, like I said. And there were times he made us all look stupid in some leagues. So.
it depended on the track and car combo.
That's
That's
what
I
it's
mean,
all about, man.
yeah. You put me at Bristol or Phoenix or Richmond, then yeah, I can hold my own. But the mile and a halfs where it's kind of a flat foot fest, especially in like C fixed and stuff like that. I just couldn't do it. I don't know how to floor it faster than other people. So
Yeah, it's
that's what I always said.
iRacing is never going to be the same as when we came up through the ranks. It's just it's too much of a numbers game nowadays, unfortunately. But you know,
Yeah.
well, Alex, I really want to thank you for stopping by and having this chat with me. It's been an absolute pleasure to go back and go through some memories and kind of talk about how we met. And you've been an excellent friend and member of this for the better part of a decade now. And I just want to thank you. It's been such a pleasure to go back and look through this, and I appreciate you stopping by with me for about an hour to chat.
Yeah, no problem. I enjoyed it. Um, like I said in that comment on the video, we could go on for hours. So if you ever want to talk about something else that pops into your head, just let me know and I'll jump back on.
I'm sure I will come up with something at some point. But I'd just like to thank everybody for stopping by the watch as well. Hopefully, you enjoyed this conversation with Alex McCann. Absolute hell of a dude, top level iRacer, and one of the nicest guys you could ever possibly meet. So I appreciate you also for giving me the idea to do this. I'm hoping I can record 5 or 6 or 7 of these with different various people and hopefully tell a little bit more of the backstory and dive into some of the better stories and details from the time of JKR. So thanks again, Alex. I really appreciate you stopping by. Yeah, I think that's all we got. Did we miss anything important?
I don't know. Probably not.
All right. Well, if we do, we'll just have to record another one someday. So that's not a
Yeah,
problem with
sounds
me.
like a plan.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for stopping by. Hopefully, I can get this video up sooner rather than later. But I hope it was entertaining. Thanks again to Alex for stopping by and joining me.
Yep.
And until next time, as always, bye.
Yeah.